Chelsea remembered what groupthink meant.
He just counted down slower so he could get the first word in. That's what just happened there.
Oh, yeah.
I don't like the counting down. It's my least favorite part of this process.
Do you want like a signal board or something, or like a clapboard?
No, because it's like you're telling me not to say anything, and I really want to fuck it up.
Help me help you. What can I do instead of counting up or down?
Count in your head and then point at me.
Okay.
Like if I see it counting down, it's too much pressure.
All right. Okay.
Okay. So I thought of groupthink. Okay. So I started the last podcast, which was either the last one or the first half of the last one, by basically screaming groupthink at nothing, for nothing, and it confused both of us. So now that you're caught up, we were talking, what were we talking about?
You said you told me.
No, I know this. I'm asking you, I'm giving them a break of hearing my voice and I'm letting them hear your voice. Just a quick recap of where we were. We never actually finished that conversation yet. We have to do that now.
I mean, is one of our conversations ever finished? Truly, philosophically?
Is that like some kind of like theoretical?
I don't know. Yeah. What was the last thing we were talking about? We were talking about our privilege as it relates to this podcast. We were talking about.
Oh no! I mean, like before the last one. When we started recording, the last one wasn't even supposed to happen, just so that everyone knows.
Yeah, it's true. We
were talking about like reality, and
sure.
I was talking about aliens, but I'm pretty sure that's not where we were supposed to be.
No. Anyways, we were talking about like an individual's perception as it relates to like the reality. Like, are they a part of the reality around them, or do they create the reality around them?
Yeah, and it was a really cool discussion, and it had nothing to do with group.
And it's not recorded, so we're just talking around a conversation that you're not privy to.
We'll catch you up. Don't worry, it's worth it.
You should worry a little bit.
So groupthink. Not necessary to have caught you up on that because this has nothing to do with it. But for my own, like my brain, I went there and we started the podcast because we thought, okay, well, let's just press record because we're already babbling. And I watched a TED Talk, which we already talked about, and that got me thinking about groupthink because she was talking about, this is Susan Cain. I'm so proud when I remember, when I can actually be like, this is this, go look it up, as opposed to just being like, I'll put it in the comments and then I'll forget. I know that.
I'm super proud when I remember anything about anything, so I can only imagine how it feels.
You have immense knowledge in your brain. You're always spitting out knowledge. It's so impressive. I just forget names.
Yeah, same. I've never remembered a name in my life. I barely remember my name most days.
Oh, hi, this is Continuous Chaos.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, this is 4 people, isn't it?
Speaking of names.
We are your hosts, debatably.
We haven't been doing this very long, as far as they know.
That's true.
So we shouldn't be held to any kind of standard.
Yeah.
And as far as they don't know, we should be way better at this by now.
Uh-huh.
So
groupthink.
Okay, I'm gonna get there. So I was watching this and I thought about our podcast, and I thought it was an important thing for us to talk about because I think we are susceptible to groupthink with each other.
Yeah. I think
I think anyone is with anyone.
Yeah. I think yeah. Like it's inherent in the name. I think. But I think that
there's a lot of thinking happening.
Yeah, I mean,
or is there?
Who even knows? That'll be for you, the viewer, to decide. If you stick with us. No, I think that one of the other things that we were talking about, that's not what I was thinking about. I just segued badly. But one of the other things that we were talking about before we started the episode is that we were confused as to why our group of friends keeps telling us to do this.
Did you just hijack that topic from me?
Yeah, well, I
was I done?
No.
Okay.
We're gonna get back to it.
Okay. Sometimes it's hard to tell.
Listen, it's taken us 4 hours to qualify groupthink. One word that you said 3 episodes ago. So just would you just no? Okay,
go for it.
yeah, we're constantly confused as to why our group of friends keeps asking us to do this. And like related to the concept of groupthink, we touched on this a few episodes ago when we were talking about like the reason that we talk to each other well and communicate ideas all right.
Why we say words.
Yeah,
and
why we
stuff.
say words to each other forever. But
It sounds so much less articulate than how we were able to say it before.
Absolutely, because that was 4 hours ago when I was arrested.
Yeah, things have changed.
And but I think it's because most of the time that we talk, there's a resonance to it and not an echo. Like,
oh, that's beautiful.
I think
I'm so tired, guys. I'm just like, oh my gosh, that's so nice.
like I think that we're able to further a point without just kind of circling back on it.
Despite how it may sound.
Yeah, despite the fact that we've spent 4 episodes talking about groupthink.
Isn't it ironic that in order to, we do evolve topics by circling them? I think it is an evolution of a topic.
Sure.
It's because we don't think the same, but we think similar enough that we're not wasting the time. I don't feel like it's time wasted.
Yeah.
And I think that when we were talking about how the thing that makes it easy for us to communicate and that makes it difficult sometimes for other people to communicate with each of us together or individually, because it's not easy to communicate with us when we're together.
Not even a little
It's
bit.
almost impossible.
Impenetrable.
The thing that also makes that difficult and somewhat annoying for other people is that we're not just staying in one place, and it's that we bounce around at the same rate, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Well, it makes sense to me because we're doing it.
Well, as to our point.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, what were you saying?
Oh, I was just saying I think we communicate well, and then I explained why, and now you're going to explain groupthink. Finally, the much anticipated explanation of.
I feel like I had something else to say to that, but I do think it's fascinating. I think that our communication style is fascinating, and it is. I know it's annoying. I recognize that.
Sure.
It's probably, maybe it is interesting to watch. Like, I find it fascinating to be a part of.
Yeah, I think that has to. I think it has to be some sort of like.
It's like an enigma.
Yeah. I don't know. You know, like it's like anything when you see something weird and strange that like
you like stop and stare and you can't look away.
Yeah, like it's like a train wreck. Like you want to look away, but you just can't.
And now you know how all of our friends feel.
Yeah.
What I find funny is that the very first one we did on this, we were acting like the only people listening was our friends, and now we're talking about them as if there's other people.
But they're still the only people
and they're
listening.
still the only ones listening.
So friends who are listening,
thank you for staying.
Thank you for supporting us. We love you.
I still don't know why this is interesting, but I'm starting to get to a point where if you genuinely like wanted to listen to this, like that's awesome, because it is kind of cool.
Yeah.
Like what we're doing is kind of cool. What we've talked about today is kind of cool. And I commend you for having the patience to listen to it in person while you were trying to do your job.
If that is
many
in fact
years
what you're
ago.
doing. Or operating a piece of heavy machinery on your way to doing your job. Which is
I meant when they were like actually a part of this.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Because like they couldn't leave.
I don't know how
it wasn't like they were pressing play
No,
and
yeah,
like
they were-
consenting to being part of this.
Yeah, they were held hostage to us.
I'm so sorry.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But anyways, you're going
But
to
yet
explain
they
groupthink.
still want us to do
You need to
this.
explain groupthink before you forget again.
I'm not going to forget. This is what it's about.
Oh, okay.
The groupthink is that the reason I felt the need to have my own separate podcast is because sometimes I worry that the way that we communicate, because it's so rapid and it is kind of a train wreck, that as we discussed before, because of who I am and the fact that the way that I see things and my personality style and all of that stuff jumbled in, I'm aware that I need to kind of take that step back and think about stuff before I come to an interaction with anybody. And I do find it easier when we're talking about stuff like this, that I can come to it that, I mean, it's nowhere near what it would be like if I was in a room full of people.
Sure.
It's still not to that level, but I do still need the time and the quiet. And I think in this environment, it gives the impression for people who don't know us, if anybody like that were to listen, that this is our authenticness. And like it is, this is us when we're talking to each other, but it's not all of us, or like all each of us is.
Right.
And I think that's important to recognize.
Sure.
Because nobody exists as they are in every situation, right? Like you're a sum total of all of those things. And when I'm by myself, I am equally as passionate about things that I'm passionate about, but I'm also calmer and quieter. And I talk fast, and I talk loud, and I talk a lot. And that, I don't think there's a reality where that stops being true, but it feels different. And I have no way to explain that. And I find it fascinating.
Yeah.
And that all kind of hit me when she was talking about groupthink. And I think if this is going to be what we want it to be, we need to be self-aware of the fact that this is like lightning in a bottle.
Sure.
But it's not who we are every day.
Right.
And at different, there's a continuum. And as we've done this, admittedly, we've done like 4 episodes in one afternoon. It's changed even in that. Like some of them might read as a little bit more high energy, and some of them are different based on the topics. But even within each one, they're going to change based on our energy and how we perceive things. So yeah, I'm very aware of how I and how other people present themselves, and not sticking them in that box. And I think that if we stick ourselves in that box, this could get away from us. And then it becomes something that we're not in control of anymore.
Sure.
Does that make any sense?
That does, yeah. I'm glad we finally got there.
You're just happy that I figured out what I was going to say.
Yeah, it's true. Listen,
but it was in depth, so I knew that I had to get there, and it had to be fully formed.
As frustrating as it was for you trying to recall the idea, it was equally frustrating for me not to have closure on what that idea was.
So now that you have closure, did you hear the idea and understand it, or are you just happy that it's done?
Both, yes.
Do you have any commentary on it? I said a lot of words.
You did. No, I agree. I think that like we spent a lot of time kind of talking about like why this would be important, or why this could be important as like a thing to do. And I think that is another angle that sums it up nicely, is just that like there's a very unique to both of us environment created when we talk to each other. And I think it creates like a really interesting place for us to have a conversation and to develop some ideas that we may have not come to otherwise, but also possibly eventually create that space for other people as well.
Yeah, and I think that is super cool, because maybe the thing that's fascinating to our friends about the dynamic is the same thing that's fascinating to us, like in that it is different. It is like I said, it's lightning in a bottle. Mm-hmm. And maybe that in itself is an entity worth sharing with other people, but just to be aware and to recognize that we are 2 individual real live people with thoughts and feelings and
Sure.
that are living lives, and that we're deliberately choosing to share this thing that is like really, I feel, rare with literally anyone who wants to listen,
Sure.
with the intention that hopefully there's good that comes to that. That's at least where I'm coming from.
Yeah.
Like I know that it might seem a little bit contrived to say that, sitting and talking about TV shows and movies and whatever the fuck we think of could actually do good. But I think it can.
Yeah.
Because we're not just going to keep it there. We're not just going to talk about that. And even when we are, that can still spark really interesting discussions that are really cool to talk about. But I see people online, like personalities, and I'm fascinated by this trend that's not a new trend. I mean, it's been around for a long time now.
Sure.
Of personalities on different places online who are just normal people, and then they're going somewhere and they're singing or they're talking or they're sharing themselves or they're acting or they're doing skits. And the followings they have is incredible and really cool, but it's so easy to lose yourself in that. And I don't know if we give like, I don't even know what you'd call that culture, because they're not classic celebrities.
Right.
And I think we almost give more credit to those people that what their experience is, and that we need to realize they're real people. But then we think of like the YouTube sensations as if they're like, we have a closer tie to them just because
Sure.
it is YouTube. And that's not always true. Like, there's still stuff about them that's private and that they're not going to share. And just because they have fans doesn't mean they stop being a person.
Right.
I think that's interesting too.
I think that like YouTube, especially the way that a lot of, but not all of, the groups and people with really big followings, a lot of their fame came because they were closer to being regular people. Like say what you will about the A-list celebrities, but like a lot of them came from means and privilege like far beyond most people. Like a lot of them come from wealthy families. They have
Connections, yeah.
connections and a lot of influence. There are way less people that got like discovered or came from nowhere than most let on. And YouTube was a little bit different because it was just sort of anyone with a camera and an internet connection. And so I think there is that sort of connotation, accurately or not, that they're more accessible, that they're people just like us.
And that's great, but do you think that do you think that because of that, and because that's almost the draw, that they're more like us and that they're relatable, that now they owe us something, like us being their fans? Like,
I think that if they're if that was the basis that got them started and now they have a following, I don't think there's any more of an obligation than like any creator to their fans. Like, I don't, I'm not sure if you're trying to create like, are you trying to create a distinction between like regular celebrities and internet personalities? Or
I mean, I think that the right to privacy should be the same for everybody.
Oh,
that's
sure.
just my opinion.
Okay, yeah, fair enough. I think that,
but I wonder if the culture of this, of like the YouTube sensations, if it changes it, that people think, okay, I don't have a right to A-lister, but I do have a right to you.
I think that I think that the YouTube or like social media or internet celebrity, like however you want to label it, I don't think that there's necessarily an obligation, and every channel is different. Like it depends
on why.
Yeah, like your channel is a
fans.
living, breathing thing. So obviously, like each channel is going to have its own culture, and so I think that some will be more susceptible to this than others. But I think that a YouTube channel, if that's the example we're going with, or a Twitch stream or whatever it is,
any kind of example.
That's based a lot of the time on interactivity with your fans. Like in the case of a live stream, if you're on Twitch or if you're on YouTube Live or whatever, most, if not all of those streams are built by the streamer interacting with people who are watching them at that moment. So there's a very it's almost entirely built on you interacting with your fan base. YouTube is the same way, but it's a little bit more dissociated, I guess, because it's you and people leaving comments or maybe like tweeting at you and stuff like that. But I think that, it's interactive in a way that it is not being a traditional like film or TV star. And TV is a little bit more susceptible to like social media and stuff because it's an ongoing thing.
Right.
But there's still not that kind of direct access to someone who writes on the TV show, someone who acts on the TV show, as there is with someone making content.
Because usually they're like a full content creator. They're doing
the whole thing.
Everything.
Yeah. And when they get big enough, they might eventually have a team. But like for the most part, you build your audience yourself.
Or at least it's your vision.
Yeah.
Even if you have a team.
Like you're talking and there's kind of like an ongoing and active dialogue between you and the people watching you. So I think that the relationship is a little different. So like, do they owe anything to that fan base? I'm gonna say like conceptually yes, because it's such an interactive medium.
Well, because you kind of that's the question. Do you need the? But you can do it without the fan base, but you can't be successful necessarily in the same way without your fan base.
Yeah,
you need them.
Yeah, exactly. Where so I think that like you. I don't want to say like you're obligated to your fans, but you like when you go into any sort of content creation like that online, you have to be aware that the relationship is not
it's not one-sided.
It's not it's not one-sided, and it's not like traditional media, because there's so much content on those platforms, and there are so many people trying to do the same thing that you're trying to do, or something similar to what you're trying to do. They will find it somewhere, and so you're doing a disservice to yourself by not at least acknowledging that reality, I think, if that makes sense.
It does make sense. I think I disagree with it, but I know what you're trying to say. But that's just as far as success is concerned.
Sure.
Like, I think that if that's the goal, then everything you've said is correct. I think that it's different if you have the goal in mind of, or like if success looks different. Like if success is a following, that's different than if success is just creating content.
Right.
And yeah, you can have a small following and make an impact and like fulfill the goal you're trying to do.
Right.
And you don't need to have a huge following, because when you have a bigger following, you're, I think, for better or worse, a little bit more beholden to them. And now like you can now lose something.
Right.
And so now you create content towards that. And I think that if you don't have a clear vision from the get-go, it's easy to move your content towards where people want it and not where you want it to be. And I kind of see that as being the cool thing too with this ability to just create content so easily, is that shouldn't we just have the freedom to just create it and put it out there and trust that if it's meant to reach certain people, it will. Like, I don't like looking at it as a competition, because I think that there's enough people consuming content that everyone can find something that's for them.
Sure.
Theoretically.
We're kind of saying the same thing then, are we not? Like, just that, like, there's not, now I have to even remember what I said, which is a problem often.
Well, maybe I misinterpreted what you said. I'm pretty sure that you were saying that I was just speaking more to your comment about how we need to recognize, like, if you're a content creator, that you kind of know there's all these other people doing what you can do, and if you don't hold your fan base, they'll find somewhere else to get like what they want. Yeah. And that's sort of what I was speaking to. Right. That I think if people if you have a really strict vision and you know what you're doing, and you're you kind of hold that as sacred to what you're doing. Sure. And you don't,
like, you'll find the audience you were meant to have.
Yes.
Okay.
And that you shouldn't have to fight for it if you really know what you're trying to do. And that's to say that, like, if you don't have an audience, that's like okay too. Right. Like, if your vision is authentic but that's like very, I don't know, gushy and hippie and feelings of me. But yeah, I feel like if there's people that are meant to listen to you, they will. And you shouldn't have to like scrape for attention. And that's like anywhere. Yeah. I just apply that knowledge of, you know, the friendships you have and the relationships that you develop. You shouldn't have to like scrape and claw for that either. Right. So why should it be any different? Especially if it's in a medium where you're more authentic than other mediums.
Gotcha. Okay. Yeah. I like under. Yeah. I guess under the idea that you're not approaching it, I guess, more or your channel more as like a business or whatever. Yeah. That just makes sense
that's
to
I
me.
guess what I'm saying. But then to that too, we were talking about
whether there was
like fans and like expectation.
Like,
of
is there
fans.
do you have an obligation to your fans? Yeah.
So maybe I asked the question wrong. It's not really an obligation. It's more of, because it's more accessible, as you said, isn't there a different kind of expectation that you run the risk of your fans thinking that that's like your entire person?
Sure.
Like that the person, if you are in a medium that is very authentic, I guess, or more real or closer to home kind of thing, that the person you are is all you are. And that there's just that assumption, when I don't think it's really true ever.
Yeah, no, I think that like in everything, there's always sort of a character or a caricature of yourself that ends up being presented. Like there's really not an easy way to communicate like your whole self across.
But do all fans recognize that truth? Especially fans that don't create content.
Yeah, I'm going to say purely statistically no. There's definitely not people, and maybe like, and I don't think that that's necessarily like intentional. It can just be an age thing or an experience thing. Like they just kind of haven't seen enough of entertainment or whatever the hell you call this type of thing to like recognize that that's the case. But I think that that's sort of in all things, right? Like that's not limited to the media you consume. That's the people you interact with. Like that's your friends and family and stuff like that, is recognizing that like there are very few people that are going to show you their whole self or even give you that opportunity. So like yeah, I think that's really just kind of an extension of being a person and interacting with people, and it's not really limited to what type of media you're consuming.
So then maybe what we've kind of touched on without either of us really meaning to is that the cool thing about these kind of entertainment or media forms is that they maybe are closer to real life in that sense.
Yeah.
They're not, we might assume that they're as authentic when the truth is they're similar because they're just as inauthentic.
Sure.
Or as limited in their authenticity.
Right.
Like, you can only be so authentic.
Yeah.
And that,
true.
I think, is a little bit of a buzzword. It's a little bit of a...
Yeah, I would say that's kind of related to the idea of like what like modern, like what hipsterism is now versus like when the movement started and it was an actual thing with ideals and stuff that people kind of stood for. As opposed to and that's what happens.
But yet you can have it without that. Like there's a difference between authenticity and, say, like even vulnerability, and that it's so hard to think of a word that sums it up, but that is what it is for me. But I would not define it as hipster.
And it's also tough because like finding that word, just like hipster and hipsterism used to carry like a very specific meaning, but as it gets co-opted and used by different groups that have different ends, it loses meaning, because then it becomes hard to parse out like exactly why they're using that word.
Well, that's why I think it's even more of a reason to have conversations like we've talked about, kind of as a theme. Like, just talk to people. Don't just use the word.
And that's why, and like we were talking about, like in politics or in society. I don't even know if we were recording when we were talking about this now. We've been talking for so long.
So much
it's
talking.
hard to tell. At some point we were talking, and hopefully it wasn't an episode, and someone listening to this can let us know,
because we're not going to go back and listen to all this.
This has all been just a giant blur at this point. We probably already had this conversation. Like, this is just, you're hearing this again for the second time.
How are we going to know if we just like repeat the exact same?
We won't. We just have to.
Again and
yeah,
again.
we're just gonna get a bunch of.
That's the reason we need a following.
Yeah, like we're gonna get a bunch of like angry comments and just being like, you already said this in episode whatever.
And I'll be like, wait, that means they're listening, Scott?
Yeah,
like, what's happening?
Yeah, exactly. So
and you'll just be like, no, they're really mad at us. And I'm like, but they're listening.
Yeah, I mean, angrily, with like clenched fists.
Like they're listening so much that they are pissed at us.
Yeah. But and I've just totally lost.
That was
it
my
again.
fault.
Yeah,
I think it's just like a game where we just try to like make each other forget what we're thinking.
Yeah, like see how easy it is to derail each other, and the answer is very.
It's easy. Yeah. You were talking about. Jesus, what were you talking about?
Oh, just how like we're like words can become
like
important
co-opted and misused.
Yeah, and then they
how
they
we
sort
have
of
to talk about
lose
them
their
to
meaning.
define
But
them.
and so we're yeah, okay. I'm back.
You literally perked up.
Yeah, we were talking about whether on or off off mic about how there's a lot of movements and organizations and whatever that are politically and ideologically very different, and I think that both of them have adopted a lot of the others' buzzwords and stuff as a way of dismissing them and delegitimizing them. And I think, yeah, that's why these conversations are important, is because there's never going to be like one word that's going to hold the proper meaning and context and connotation behind it. They always inevitably have other stuff attached to them, or lose all of the stuff attached to them. And I think that is what we're seeing a lot of now, like in political groups, in other like socially minded groups and stuff like that, is we're relying too much on one or two words to say something when we need a few more.
We need to have a conversation.
Yeah.
Is really what it comes down to. And that's not to say that I don't think they have bad intentions necessarily.
No, I don't think so either.
I think that it's good intentions to perhaps make things more efficient, but I don't really know if that's what's actually happening. I think we need to have conversations. I think
Like
that
it
needs to take time.
Yeah, like I think we've gone a little too far in striving for brevity and for concise language, because we've removed too much of the meaning and kind of the kind of gravity
Yeah, absolutely.
of those concepts.
But nothing needs to be beaten to death. We just need to find a happy medium.
Yeah,
because we're like, we literally
we
cut off
overcompensate.
words. Like, we combine words
Yeah.
and we cut off words halfway. And nobody is that busy. Like, we don't need to do that. And instead, we should dig into the word, dig into the conversation, talk to people, and then just define it for each other. Like, if you're talking about a word, define, say, like, what vulnerability means to you in that context, so that at least you're having a conversation about shared facts.
Sure.
Right?
Yeah.
Because we assume that if we use certain vocabulary, that's what it's for. It's a vehicle for shared facts. But it's not. That's not a given. Not with all the words we have.
Yeah, like especially now.
Yeah.
For sure.
Yeah, that's interesting. How did we get here? How many times are we going to say that?
That's really going to be the meme of this podcast, is people keeping account of us questioning who we are, why we're here, what we're doing.
Yeah, I have no idea how we got to there.
Well, we started with groupthink because we finally arrived at why that came up in the first place.
I have a question.
Okay.
You don't ask very many questions. That wasn't a question. That was a statement.
All right.
That wasn't what I was going to say. But I just realized I ask you a lot of questions. And you know what? I genuinely like hearing what people think about things. That's why I ask lots of questions.
Okay.
I find it fascinating to be like, here's a thought that's rolling around in my head.
Right.
Go.
Okay.
Like, what do you think about it? That's cool for me. So, and then invariably I'll interrupt you, which is really rude. But for the case of this, I'm not offended when you interrupt me.
Sure.
And I hope you're not offended when I interrupt you.
I feel like our relationship would have been a lot shorter.
I feel like we wouldn't actually get things out if we were worried about interrupting each other. Yeah, so if anyone's worried that we're being mean to each other, we are, but like...
We've also known each other for...
It's okay. Like
longer than you would think.
So, the question I was going to ask is, how do you think this relates? Or do you think that this kind of topic relates to, like, pop culture and that kind of stuff? Because there's people who... So I beat things to death. Like we were just saying, you don't have to beat everything to death.
Yeah.
I mean, I do that. And I mean, if you didn't do it, we wouldn't have much to talk about.
Sure.
So you do too. But there's people that think, TV shows are just TV shows.
Sure.
Movies are just movies. Music is just music. We don't have to talk all this stuff to death. And that is why our society is so sensitive and so busy and so overwhelmed, is that we over talk about stuff, and we do that. And does it land, whatever answer you have, does that land in a different place from meaningless chatter and meaningful chatter? Like, is there a distinction? That was a good question.
It was a good question.
I'm very proud of me.
Well, I think, again, it's what the people in the conversation take out of it. I think that there's a lot of stuff that we would classify as small talk, and I don't know in a lot of detail like what your feelings are about small talk. I don't really.
It's not positive.
I'm bad at it.
I'm really terrible at it. I don't
at the very least,
know what to do.
Yeah, like at the very least, if it's a tool, it's one that I've never had.
Is it a tool?
Well, I think it is a way of like
it eases people in. That's
yeah,
for
when
sure.
when I
I'm
talk to
bad
people,
at it.
yeah, like when I talk to people about it, they're like, oh yeah, like it's usually the thing that you. I just find that like if that's what I start with, that's kind of where I stay, and it's hard to kind of transition into the stuff that I find more meaningful.
If I'm gonna be that person who I am, I might as well just be that from the get-go, or else people are going to be really shocked.
Exactly. Like,
but I understand it's kind of like...
so I'm sure that there's someone out there, and there are definitely people out there that are able to do that, and that's really cool. I just can't. So
I think there's people that do it as a skill. You're right. Now that I've thought about that, you're right. It is. There's some people that... But those are the people who know how to deepen it.
Sure.
And that's the skill.
Yeah.
I think that's the skill.
Is being able to bridge.
There's also people... where small talk, I hate it because I'm bad at it, but I'm not against small talk.
Yeah.
I'm not bashing small talk as a thing.
Right.
But I have a tendency to wrap up small talk with a fear of going deeper.
Okay.
And I had a very disappointing online dating experience.
All right.
Where this came up, and I was accused of being very terrible at small talk. And then this person proceeded to, gaslight me and be incredibly rude and manipulative and just exceedingly unaware of their projections and how all of the stuff that was a problem that they had with me was actually a them problem. And it was a really upsetting conversation for me because I was just like, okay, like, I can't be in your life and you just need to go away, but holy crap, you've got a lot of stuff to work on. And I don't say that with judgment. Like, I say that with, like, for you to treat me this way, I hope you're all right. But, like, this is not okay. My boundaries here, you can't use your crap to treat me this way. But, like, for you to think that this is an okay thing to do is, like, really problematic, and that's unfortunate. Maybe that sounds judgmental. I don't know, but I'm going to own it because it was really shitty. And yeah, it was like, you're really bad at small talk. And it's like, well, I don't really have time for that shit. Like,
yeah.
Right.
So,
but if you use small talk to avoid feelings, that's where I have an issue with it. Whereas if you use it to cushion things, maybe we both could probably be better at that because I'm the person like in an elevator that is not going to be like, oh, like, so weather, but I might be like, how's your mental health today?
Sure.
And that's a normal question for me to ask, but some people are like really freaked out by it.
Yeah. So I don't I guess to the question then, I don't think there's any, I don't think there's, meaningful and meaningless talk. I think it's, being able to recognize kind of the context or like where they are in the conversation and where you are in the conversation, and recognizing, how and why they're communicating at what level they're doing that at, if that makes sense.
It does. So if you're talking to somebody, so there's a couple scenarios.
Yep.
You and I are talking about a movie in much deeper level than maybe is necessary to somebody else's opinion.
Sure.
And that's over here.
Yep.
And then two people are talking about that same movie in a very surface level situation, and that's over there.
Yep. And
I think that's cool as long as there isn't like that cross judgment.
Sure.
And because I'm predisposed to the deeper conversation, I'll admit I might be a little bit biased and I might think that surface level conversation is materialistic and surface level.
Sure.
I might think it's almost irrelevant because why bother talking about it? I also recognize they might feel that way about the way that we're talking about it. But how do you navigate that when you take each of those people and you switch them?
So if you have one person of each talking to one of the other?
Yeah, then I think the reason that I am inclined to say that the surface level conversation is a little bit irrelevant is because if you put me with that person, I get pissed off that what they want wins out.
Okay. Fair enough. Yeah, no, I think that is like I think I would feel that way on either side of it. Like if I was having, because there's also like a the movie example is really good because there is a sliding scale there. Like it would be a conversation. It could be a conversation between, in this scenario, the person who's having the surface level conversation is someone that movie trailers tend to be targeted towards. It's the person that sat in my screening of Thor and laughed at every joke and then proceeded to repeat that joke as if it was his own joke very loudly in the theater, and it drove me crazy.
Like right after it was said?
Like right after. So it would be like on the screen, joke happens, audience laughs, kind of chuckles, whatever, and then he would be laughing, and then he would say that line again and then laugh at it. It was incredible. How angry I was at that person in that moment. But yeah, anyways, like that person talking to you or me would be
that we wouldn't last long.
Yeah, exactly. Or like I think that like if you're talking to, if like one of us was talking to like a film studies major, I think that in that case we might actually be like what I'm trying to communicate. There's like a scale, I guess.
Oh yeah, that's true.
So,
but it's also what you're talking about because
sure.
like. Because it's a scale not only of the interest, but also like movies, there's so much depth there. So like a film studies major might be more concerned about like the cinematography and
sure.
the story that tells.
Right.
Whereas we might be more concerned with like the social implications.
Right.
And so it's like a continuum, but it's also like a tier because we can be on the same like place in the continuum.
Right.
I have to express this with my words because no one can see my hand gestures. If we're in the same place in the continuum, but we're just on different planes of that.
Yeah.
So like but then I'm not trying to say that the person who's having the surface level like conversation is an idiot at all.
Yeah.
It's just that what their interest is in is just different.
It's just difficult deciding like which, because they're, if neither of you wants to have that conversation and you're stuck in it anyways for whatever reason, it's hard deciding like, yeah, like which side takes
I think
precedence.
It's always the surface level. I think that's why I have I have animosity towards those types of conversations and the people that fight for them, because I'm like, you think that what I'm talking about has no merit and you think it's so stupid. And even if I believe that about what you're saying,
sure.
If you and I had a conversation, I would have no choice but to talk about what you're talking about.
Yeah, no, I see what you mean. Because like if like
you can't flip it.
If the UN sent in neutral investigators, like they would probably side with this surface level person. Like they would just be like you went too deep. Like this is like.
Right.
You're in Inception.
And then it's like you are wrong.
Yeah,
it's like you're going too. Like you said too. You're going too deep.
Yeah, it's
you
like,
did something bad.
Yeah, like you're Leonardo DiCaprio in Inception. You went too far into the like. It's all a washout. Yeah, no, I agree. I think that, as someone who has often been on that side of the conversation, which again is not to say that I think I'm operating on like another level.
No, not at all.
With people, like it's just.
It's really just like I'm not interested in having the conversation you're interested in having.
When I get
vice
interest,
versa.
yeah, like when I get interested in stuff, I go real deep on it, and that's my.
Me too.
That is my blessing and my curse. And in most conversations, that is my curse, and.
But it still has value.
It does, but
because
I think
if it didn't, nobody would think that way. We wouldn't think that way, and there wouldn't be other people like us who think that way. And it doesn't have to be on every topic,
right?
Because there's certain topics that I don't want to go that deep on.
I think that it's because there's sort of a it's more, and again, this is not to look down on the other person. I think it's more the courtesy. It's more courtesy towards the person who is working on the more surface level side, because I guess
you both have that much information.
Yeah, like I guess
without making it about intelligence.
Yeah, like I would say more like to have any sort of conversation, you sort of have to find the commonality between you anyways, and so yeah, you have to operate to their level of experience, because if you
or interest.
Because if you keep going on your level, you automatically alienate them because they just don't have the interest, vocabulary,
but what
knowledge.
about us being alienated? Like, I'm not saying like, oh, boo-hoo, it's so hard being us, but like, this is why people like us don't exist. No, it is though, because I think that there's way more, like, we act like we're so different. And yes, I think that the way that we can communicate is different, and the respect and the topics and the interest, enough things align that it's really good.
Right.
But I don't think that there's anything really special about thinking deeply. I just wonder if the people who do it or want to do it are alienated from doing it, and they feel like they're wrong, and they feel like they don't fit in. So they're just like, well, that's just not worth it.
I think that's why nerds exist. That's
it's so sad.
I think that is I think that's the plight of the nerd summed up.
But everybody is capable of being that.
Everyone's capable of being it.
Like,
yeah,
I feel like we're painting a picture of this person that's just like,
well, okay,
this like
so I should
like blob who's
and
like, I don't
should,
like anything.
I should qualify as well that like those people probably do have that depth of knowledge on something. We're just not speaking to it at the moment. It's just that it comes up most often in things that are usually a shared experience. So movies, TV, books are really easy ones because a lot of people do at least some of those things. We've had almost literally 5 hours of conversation.
Good Lord.
Today alone about
because
stuff.
Put us in a room with a microphone or not with a microphone.
About stuff.
And we'll talk about shit.
Yeah, but about stuff that we have a common interest in, or at least like, again, we've kind of identified that we have similar conversation mechanisms, so it can really sort of be anything.
Yeah.
But at the same time, like, there's even a back and a forth on that, because like if I started to talk about video games in the way that I talk about video games,
I tune out.
You could hear Chelsea's eyes roll into the back of her head through the mic.
That's why we have flugelhorn.
Yeah. And and the same, yeah, exactly. And the same thing on your side. I don't know what that is, because I'll talk about anything without knowing about anything.
I know, but, and that's why I feel like I'm doing a disservice to you, because I will not fake interest in things.
Right.
I'm interested in a lot of things,
sure,
but
yeah.
I also know what I'm not interested in.
Yeah, and that's fine. Like, no one should be, no one.
But there's got to be things you're not interested in.
Yeah, probably, but I'll still talk about them. Like, I just like whatever.
Okay, so Scott is a superior being than I am.
No, it's not that. It's like my interest on something is not determined by the act itself. What I'm interested in is hearing why someone else is interested in it. Like, if that makes sense. Like, I don't...
That does make sense.
Okay.
And without... I promise I'm not trying to personally attack you.
Right.
You can talk about video games in a certain way that I can totally get on board with.
Sure.
When you're talking about them, like you're explaining them to me, and like, I feel like that's before you go deep in them.
Sure.
And once you go deep, I don't see...
Right.
Like, I can't connect with why you like it, because you're just... off in Scott world.
And there's also like,
and it's like, I'm just like, where do I...
Yeah, and there's a lot of like investment and just like me building experience like with games or with whatever that you're not privy to. And so
and there's also a lot of vernacular with it that I just don't understand.
Yeah.
So like,
and
you can talk to Dilemma about this stuff.
Yeah,
and I feel like I watch you talk about it, and I'm like, that's good. He should be talking to her about that, and because they know what they're talking about, and they're both enjoying the conversation.
Right.
But I actually get more out of watching you and Dilemma talk about stuff like that, because I can see that both of you enjoy it.
For sure.
Then I can sense your enjoyment when you talk to me about it.
Yeah, totally.
If that makes sense.
Absolutely. So that's kind of what it is for me, and that like that's why I'll kind of end up in a conversation talking about anything, is because like I'm just like one level less abstracted than that, I guess, where like I am okay being in that conversation where as long as that person can communicate their enthusiasm to me, like that's more what it is. Like,
that might just be why that could be the key to our communication. Because,
probably.
like, I can communicate my passion for things quite easily, I believe.
Right.
And that's usually the thing that drives other people crazy.
Yeah. Whereas like that's what I actively seek out in a conversation. Yeah. So yeah, probably.
It's really because I have no poker face and I can't hide my excitement for things.
Yeah, same.
So I'm just like, oh my gosh, let's talk about this.
Yeah.
But then also to that, as you've seen on my face, I also am like, I have a bad poker face. So when I like lose interest rapidly, it's
like,
very
you know,
obvious.
right away. Yeah.
And I do feel bad because I don't try to like go like glass-eyed on people.
Right.
But sometimes I'm just like, and I have to be conscious of that so that I actually say, I'm really sorry. Like I tuned out. And some people think that's a rude thing to say. And some people think that the opposite is rude. And I kind of land on the fact that I'd rather just own it and just say like, you're losing me here. Maybe let's go back or explain this. I'm not saying shut up. Yeah. That's not what I'm saying. I just don't want to put someone in a position where they feel ignored.
Right.
I would rather just admit it than for them to be like, God, like, this is really rude, or like to have somebody looking away from you and you know,
like visually disinterested.
You feel that.
Like, oh, you know, yeah.
And you feel it and you ignore it and you keep talking and then you like ask a question and then you just have your being ignored confirmed because they're like, huh?
Well, and that's just as bad for you. Like,
exactly.
like
I might as well just own it, right?
Yeah.
But there's still a lot of things that I'm interested to talk about. And because of that, I have these encounters with people that are, usually it's on social issues where they're like, why are you beating this to death? Like, can't it just be a show?
Right.
Why can't I just enjoy the movie? And my argument is like, you can do whatever you want. But if I have a platform on my social media or around my friends or around people that will either hear me out willingly or will engage, then I want to talk about the deeper implications because media and pop culture does influence the way we live our lives.
Whether or not you want to acknowledge it, like it doesn't change.
Yes, it exists. Like whether people, I almost wonder if people are just in denial that I'm not forcing you to think that this show or movie or music or whatever it is has an influence. It does.
It does. Like
that is something that I actually do have the authority and the credentials to back up.
Yeah.
And no, I don't have all of the knowledge to say, like, here's what the current theory on this is and how it affects things. Sure. But I know enough to know it matters. And so it's really frustrating for me when people, A, say that sociology is common sense, and then follow it up with, whether in the same sentence or like 5 years later, it's like, you are a person who thinks sociology is common sense. And you are also a person who thinks that pop culture has no relevance in our lives and we don't need or have no value in discussing it.
Sure.
I'm like, okay, well, that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah. Pick one.
Yeah. I mean, yes, sociology is common sense, but it's deeper than that. And if nothing else, I hope that people who believe that realize that sociology is the reason that I know that the movies and the TV and the music and the podcasts and the media that we choose to consume has an impact on our social consciousness and ourselves. It just does. That's like maybe the one thing I've learned from 5 years of university. Sure. That's it. But it's a good lesson because it's the biggest lesson I've fought against in the time since I've been out.
Right. Is
people that are just like, that's not relevant. Or why? Just why? And I'm like, because it matters. And because the people, I don't feel like the people who create the content believe that. I think they're creating content because they want to make a statement.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. And as discussed, I'm not on the other side of this argument. But I think that the people that are making that argument were either raised with it or just aren't thinking about it. Obviously, like
because as they've expressed us, they don't want to think about it.
As they've made clear, as we build the straw man, and then go in on it. But there is an impact, and I think that like just because I'm not going to say I grew up that way, but thinking back on how I grew up, there was a lot of kind of and like we've talked about this before, not on any of these podcasts, so we're bringing up a new concept, so we're not just circling around on stuff constantly, but we've talked
not stuff that's live,
but we've talked about how there's like a hierarchy of entertainment, right? Like there's
I've had this conversation with lots of people, actually. It's fascinating.
Absolutely. And I think that like TV, music, and now video games and stuff kind of fall into that like lower tier. I feel wrongly now, but that's kind of generally where they're placed. Like there's sort of fine art at the top, and then
Are you saying you agree with this, or are you saying that's just the way that it is?
I'm saying that's the way that it is. I don't agree with it.
Agreed.
Sorry. Yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, like people, and so people will talk about, like there's the fine arts. There's, and even with that, it gets weird because like, I think people would probably place classical music there versus like pop music or, other genres and stuff like that.
Like anything you have to like wear like a nice outfit to go.
Yeah,
attend it,
exactly.
or like something like that.
And like the literary classics versus like teen lit.
But then people talk about literary classics or like even classical music or ballet. They talk about those quote unquote like higher level entertainment in the way that we talk about movies.
Right.
But yet that I feel has always been socially acceptable.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and I think
what the fuck?
Well, that I think that's just like a relative age thing. Like classical music has been around for hundreds of years, even though like some of that stuff was basically was the pop music of its day.
But it's a social agreement that at various points in time people talk deeply about entertainment. It's just that we don't think that like TV movies. Yeah, we're just like they're not allowed to be a part of that conversation.
I think we're just like in the phase culturally where that's where like movies, music, and video games are, and like there is like there's it's also tough because even though this was again sort of always the case, there's a very bit like business and art are probably further entwined than they've ever been. Like it used to be you just kind of like would line up a patron and they would like make sure that you could like live while you painted or made music or whatever like that, whereas now like there's studio influence, there's marketing, there's ad buy-ins, there's brand integration, there's like all that stuff that ruins. And this is getting back to I guess like the legitimacy argument even like where I think the reason that fine art has stayed where it is because it like at this point now it's pure, like there's less,
it has a different kind of integrity.
Yeah, there's there's less commercial influence, and it's protected in a way that prevents like you don't like no one's gonna like yell Doritos in the middle of like a symphony orchestra, right? Like it's not gonna be like a commercial break.
Yeah, that's a really good way to look at it.
And so I think that sort of plays on the idea of like just the legitimacy of art.
I wonder how the people who, I mean, we're painting a picture of a group, and that's never a good idea. Yeah. But
again, we're just stuffing the straw man.
People that argue, for the surface level conversations, I wonder if there's some of them at least who would agree that if you're talking about certain kinds of art having a different level to it, or having a little bit more like authenticity or integrity, so that it allows for those conversations. I believe that even if you don't want to talk deeply about everything, there's some works, whether they're movies or TV shows or video games, that have maintained that integrity in spite of all of these obstacles. Yeah, and so even if you don't agree about talking deeply about everything, maybe at least you can agree about talking deeply about those, the ones that are really striving for that, and then you get closer to realizing they all actually are.
Yeah, and I think that like that's a really good way to look at it. And then again, like you're asking someone who's already kind of not bought into this concept of like TV being art or video games being art or what or being legitimate or however you want to phrase it. They're probably not going to go through and find those like really granular exambles that will bring them to. Sure. Like it's there's actually a really good YouTube channel that I watch. I'm going to give him a plug here because I don't know. We're not really doing like journalism here. I'm not sure what kind of ethics are at play, but I'm full disclosure. I support this guy on Patreon. I give him money whenever he makes a video, so that's out there or whatever. But I support his stuff. I think he makes good content. Sideways on YouTube makes videos about music, and not like the history of or anything like that. But he'll kind of take like a musical theory concept or a concept like how music relates to pop culture, and he goes in real deep on it, and it's like an awesome video. I'll show you one after because it's really cool. But anyways, everyone look up Sideways on YouTube, give him a view. And
if nothing else, at least we're plugging cool people.
And
like we're talking about articles we read.
And one of his videos that he did, he talks about how music will fall into it's sort of like it's a Venn diagram. There's 3 circles that are all overlapped. Everyone should know what a Venn diagram is, I think
think so.
Yeah, all right. Look
It's
it up
some
if you don't.
circles.
Yeah, it's circles.
It's some circles.
Yeah, and so like there's the three spheres of music. Apparently, this was how like one of his professors kind of modeled this idea. But the three spheres of music are pop, folk, and art, and all music falls into at least one of those spheres. And I think that like their perception of where stuff falls in is only pop, which like tends to lack substance because it's produced for the lowest common denominator. Like that's kind of just how it works. That doesn't take away from its significance or its meaning. It's just that was how
or how good it is, or you perceive it.
Exactly. It's just
it's
how
made for more people to like it.
How and why it was made. Whereas like the artistic sphere is more produced to like kind of further the ideals of that art, and it is inherently less accessible because there's a fair amount of context and knowledge required to understand and appreciate what's going on when it's produced in that. So the folk sphere is a little bit harder because it's not really like a good example of like folk TV. I don't think that necessarily really exists, or like I think something would have to go through one of those other two spheres before passing into folk because it has to kind of gain cultural cachet and stuff like that. But either way, I think that what we would be asking of someone would be they would at the most they're interfacing with like the pop sphere of stuff, and we would be trying to drag them into the art space to kind of gain that appreciation, and that's a lot to ask of a person to take on.
But is that to say you can't appreciate the things in the pop sphere?
Oh no, not at all. I think that's actually where like,
or that you can't have deeper conversations about them.
The way that the place that and this like the reason why I like this guy is he's way smarter than me, but he explains stuff in a way that I can understand, particularly where music is involved. But he talks about how, and this is like probably mostly a direct quote from his video, like he's not smart enough to operate in academia in the art space, but he's too smart kind of to just stay purely in the pop space. So where he operates is where pop and art intersect, because he wants to have kind of that deeper analysis and understanding and conversation about the pop stuff, using the techniques and knowledge of the art space, even though he doesn't command kind of like a full working knowledge of that stuff.
That's interesting.
Yeah, so that's like kind of where I fall, and like where I would like other people to be,
so that you can talk to them.
Yeah, exactly. But yeah, that's kind of like where I'm at in my understanding of how I connect or do not connect to other people as I talk to them. And yeah, I think that like when you find those people that are kind of not operating or not thinking about things on the same level as you, like it's just, it feels like a big ask.
It does.
To kind of get them to move there.
It doesn't mean either one of us is wrong.
Yeah, and that's why I feel like, or I don't feel bad, or like I've like surrendered to them in a conversation or whatever, by only speaking to their level. It's just like I recognize it's a lot of work for something that you're already not really that interested in to get to where we are in the conversation.
Yeah, that's fair.
I feel like I don't feel bad about that because it would be the same thing if like someone asked me to go all in on
you can't think of anything, can you?
I don't know, like
he can't think of anything.
Yeah, no, I'm really struggling here.
I was really hoping you'd think of something.
No,
so
I was.
I could like
I
troll you by bringing
I was
it
like,
up
what
a
is?
lot.
Yeah, no,
and then
I
I'd
was
be like,
too.
okay,
I
so
was
let's
like,
talk about this thing.
Yeah, no, I was like, what is the thing where I would draw the line? And no, I don't know. I think if you could make your case for it, I would listen.
Yeah, I already knew that.
Yeah.
So I'm glad you came to that conclusion as well. And we all got to witness it.
No, I was really hoping in the moment.
You were really trying.
Like, yeah, no, I was just like, if I just commit to this point, something will come to me.
It will be a point.
I just totally.
I think I just need to be a little bit more understanding of the people that want the surface level conversations, and that I can separate that understanding from, also just like not. Like continuing to not make apologies for the kind of conversations that I enjoy and that I want to have. And that if that means, you know what, this thought experiment is pointless, because if you're in that situation, you could just leave it.
Right.
Like,
Yeah,
this
totally,
conversation becomes like null and
Yeah.
void.
Like,
if we're just
neither party is hostage to the other.
if you know this person doesn't enjoy these kind of conversations and you're just not in the mood, you can just be like, okay, I'm gonna take myself out of it.
I guess the only thing that I get really self-conscious about is I worry that like maybe I didn't find a way to bring them into whatever like they wanted to do or wanted to talk about. Like that's the only thing that I get really worried about.
You might be a better person than I am.
I don't think that's true, but
I think people should be free to just like ask.
sure.
Like, so that it's like, you know, I won't feel guilty about that unless I'm removing myself from a situation that somebody is really trying to engage me in.
Sure.
If it's a situation where we're both just like equally disinterested in being there, then that's fine.
Sure.
But yeah, if they want to talk about something else, then I'll make an effort, as I would expect they would do for me.
Right.
And that it's just a give and take.
I think yeah.
My dog is really unhappy.
It's true, yeah. So mad.
She's so unhappy.
Yeah. I think maybe that's
Do you
just
think you
because
can talk to yourself for 5 minutes?
Oh,
Can we try that?
Sure.
Okay, I think that's even
that's
more
really
fun
funny
than
though, because you're not
pausing
even gonna know what happened in this episode. You're not listening to this again. Yeah. Okay. Well, Chelsea left me all alone, so I'm gonna talk about a video game because she's not gonna talk about it while she's here. I'm gonna give another plug for Cuphead. It's a really good game that came out this year. It's all hand-drawn animation, like old school Disney cartoons, and it's really tough. It's a boss rush game, so you as Cuphead have to shoot bosses in the old school Contra style. It's super fun. It was made by two brothers. They're Canadian. It's pretty great. All of the music is done by, I think it was an 8-piece jazz band, I want to say. Anyways, the whole thing was made with a lot of love, and it deserves attention. It's already a commercial success, but it deserves more attention. It's probably one of the best looking games this year. Gosh, I really can't talk to myself about anything. I'm used to having another person in this. I was really just vamping. I talked about Cuphead for about a minute and a half.
You were so quiet. I was like, did he give up and pause it?
I was just like, no, there was just like a straight pause in the recording. So, yeah, no, I was talking about Cuphead. It's a pretty great video game.
My dog had to go to the bathroom.
Oh, yeah. That would be a reason to be sad.
Yeah, that's a fair reason. I'll give her that. And then she stepped in her pee, and that's unpleasant. And so then I get to be the person who cleans it up.
Cool.
So that's all good. So did I miss anything that I'd be interested in? Based on a previous conversation.
Yeah, about how you don't want to talk about video games. I think okay. So the one thing that like I would be interested in hearing about is okay.
Oh,
so
you're asking a question.
Yeah, I am asking.
Your
a question.
questions are always about stuff I don't care about.
Yeah, it's true. Yeah, but I am capable of asking questions.
But also, I'm capable of
okay,
seeing your interest and engaging with it.
Yeah. So Cuphead is a really sorry. I have like something in my eye. I don't know what's going on.
They can't
so it's
see.
Really, yeah, it really sucks. Anyways,
that sucks
for anyone listening. But no. Okay. So the game Cuphead is it's a very mechanically demanding game. Like it's very precision based in like how you move and shoot at things and stuff like that. And it brought up an argument that is not new, but it was interesting because I think it was like the first time I really saw that argument play out in any sort of like social media. Like it wasn't a big discussion, but there was like I saw some Facebook post where some people were talking about it, whatever. And so I was just interested. So video games have like an execution requirement, right? Like they, because they're interactive, like it's kind of up to the player to be able to play and complete whatever the game puts in front of you. Mm-hmm. So Cuphead is generally regarded as like a really hard game. And because of that, some of the people who bought that game are not going to be able to see the ending, just because they're not able to beat some of the bosses and stuff like that. so the argument that's being raised is that wrong or conceptually like a bad move on the developer's part? Like, should they be obligated to include a way for everyone to see the ending or access content in the game?
Is that it?
Yeah, that's it.
Is this a topic about basic equality?
Well, it raises...
Or are they talking about it more in the sense of people that actually have like limitations?
So it raises some questions definitely about accessibility.
Because when you say that, my first thing is accessibility.
Yeah, and accessibility in games is I'm not going to say it's like a super... I've seen discussions about it. It's not a really big thing, but I think that there's also
I'm surprised it's not a big thing.
Yeah, there's not, like, I'm going to say it's not that it's not a big thing, is that maybe, like, and again, like, the ableist, or, like, I don't have any...
To clarify, you're not an ableist, you just have able privilege.
Yeah, and so, like, it's not something that I really actively seek out, which is maybe my fault. And I should think about that more. But I guess I'm just not in the circles where I see it discussed a lot. I'm
not in those circles at all, because I don't do
exactly.
video games,
And I've
so
seen
you can
it,
speak more to
like,
it.
I've seen it discussed. I know that there are like controllers and mods out there to help people be able to play games in that regard. But this, I don't necessarily know that was entirely the question. I think it was just a matter of, like, if a game is made too difficult, like, is there an obligation to make sure, because as a consumer, you've bought and paid for this game, this piece of software or whatever, does that entitle you to be able to access all of it just through the act of purchasing it?
I don't know where I stand on that.
I know, isn't it interesting?
I think I'm surprised that I err on the side of saying that they... Yeah, like, I feel like no, with the caveat that that's only for games where it's not really a discussion about accessibility.
Right.
Because I think that they can, there can be one without the other. Like, you can have
definitely,
a game.
Definitely.
And
I think this was more...
If we're talking about, like, accessibility,
yeah.
I think that that's a really important thing, especially because people who play some of these games are doing it so that they can have an experience they might not otherwise be able to have. And so for them to be locked out of that as well,
right, seems
a little bit ridiculous,
right,
and kind of like it's not like not unfair, because like you can just be like, well, life's unfair, but like it's not right. I don't think it's right.
Yeah, definitely. So I think that's a good caveat, is like the tone and timbre of this conversation was more about like, as a consumer who owns the license to that software, should you be able to access all of it, or if the developer intended for it to be earned, should you have to earn it? And I think that the only reason that this really sparked as much of a debate as it did is because the game made the, I think, unwise choice of including simple modes for the bosses. But if you play on simple, you can't play the last two stages. Like, you can't fight the last two bosses.
Just playing simple mode make it easier to eventually play the regular mode?
Yeah, in the sense that, like, you'll be able to, like, get a sense of, like, what the boss is about, like moving from simple to normal.
So conceptually you could argue, or the game makers could argue, that they did it so that you could eventually get
play
there.
The game as they intended you to experience it. Yeah. And
I think that's their right, as making a game.
And that's the side that I fell on as well. Like, I think, and again, this is one of those things, like, it was hard for me to judge because, like, generally speaking, and again, this isn't a brag because this usually means that there's like a billion people that are still better than me, but like I'll be in the top 10% of people who play like competitive games or whatever in the games that I play. Like, there are games absolutely that I am shit at anyways, but like, generally speaking, game to game, like, I'll be somewhere in the top 10%.
Well, and that's why it's difficult for you to speak on this,
which is why I was looking at that,
because you don't want to be like, well, I think it this way, and therefore, if you just sucked less, you would agree with me.
Because it's hard to know, like, because I'm not...
Like, I don't think that's the argument, though, because, like, I'm not playing, I have no interest in playing this game. But I still think that, because it's not, I don't come from that position of if you don't suck, then it shouldn't be a problem.
Yeah,
I come from the position of the perspective of the people who made the game.
And that's like, and I guess that speaks to, and this is why, like, I brought this up, because I think that, like, the larger implications of that debate are probably more interesting to you, because it's more about, like, to what degree, like, a creator should, like, can and should be able to dictate how their content is consumed.
Yeah. Like, as much as the consumer can make the argument, I paid for this product.
Yeah.
The creator can also say, yeah, but I created this product.
Yeah, and
this is what it is.
Like,
you know what it is.
They had a very specific,
like,
experience
you don't have
in
to
mind.
buy it.
Yeah. Yeah, it was just really interesting to see perspectives. And like I said, I just have a hard time kind of looking at that argument, because, like, I played and
because you're not an asshole.
Yeah,
and you're trying to not be one.
I try, like, I do my best, and also, like, I played and beat Cuphead, so, like, it's hard for me to, like, understand that argument, because I did it and I saw the stuff.
Well, I'm glad you asked me that. This is a very interesting topic. And it goes beyond video games. It goes beyond a lot of stuff.
For sure.
You know how my brain works. He's like, he's messing with me, because he's just like, oh, this is something that I can reel her in with.
Yeah, I'm gonna get you into games. Yeah, I got her.
I can talk about, like,
no,
and that's why I can talk about this stuff.
And, like, that's why I brought up the question the way that I did, and that's why I brought up that specific question.
Me.
Yeah, because, well, yeah, and, like, I understand what you're gonna respond to, and, like, and that was a really good, like, it was a contentious issue. And
I like those.
Yeah, exactly. But like, there are like, implications and parallels you can draw to stuff that you are interested in. I think video games is, like, it's a really
it's just a consumer issue.
Yeah, and it's also, I think it is sort of a fairly singular issue to video games, because they're the only interactive medium. Like, there's not, you can't,
True,
you never, like, you don't really buy a book and then suddenly find halfway through you can't read the last half, right?
Okay, but what about, like, I know that this is not the same example, but, like, what if you just don't like something? Like, yes, it's different because it's stopping them from knowing how the game ends, and therefore they can't really make a decision. But in essence, they don't like something about this game.
Sure.
And if we're talking about it being like a creator makes something, and this is how it plays out.
Right.
And part of how it plays out is that you have to be at a certain skill to be able to get there.
Right.
You essentially don't like that game.
Right.
Is that really so different from me reading a book and finishing it and being like, God, that was a stupid book, and I paid for it, therefore I should like it?
I don't think so. I think that, like, there's always an assumed risk when you buy a book. Does
this not go into the bigger issue of just people being kind of entitled?
Yeah, totally.
And just because you paid for it doesn't mean it's going to, like, do everything you want it to do or wish it did, or you now have to claim something. Like, they created it.
Right.
Nobody is forcing you to buy it.
So this is really interesting, because I'm going to bridge this into another thing, and I wrote this into our Google Doc as a joke, and then you yelled at me for it.
I didn't yell.
Well, it was like an implied yell on the.
I was like.
Anyways, there's a Google Doc that we were
asking a question assertively
with
get you
with
to
purpose.
Stop talking.
Okay, so
we made a Google Doc for our friends to share opinions, and I shared it, and the first person that started typing things in, like, faster than I could catch up was Scott, and I'm like, we're already doing the podcast.
Sure.
And then he proceeded to use the comment section to troll our Google Doc.
It was super funny. It was maybe we'll post up a screenshot of that someday. I'll just put that on the screen.
That's just how we communicate. We can't stop it. It's just, it happens.
It's just an unbroken chain of antagonism from me to you.
But the good kind.
Okay, so this is interesting. So here's a similar issue. Again, controversy rocks the gaming scene.
Okay, great, go.
Okay, Star Wars Battlefront 2 came out.
Okay. That means nothing to me.
Yeah. It's you play as your favorite Star Wars people and try and shoot the other Star Wars people that aren't you.
Okay. Pretty straightforward.
Yeah. So this game comes out. It is a full price release. So in Canada you paid $80 for this game. Possibly more if you bought, like, the deluxe edition or whatever.
So really, this is, again, not about video games. This is just about, like, consumerism.
Yeah. This is interesting because it's the same issue, and yet, or not the same issue, but related to the same issue.
But it's reversed. You caught me in like a
and yet I come
trick.
I come out on the other side of it because I'm on the same side as you for Cuphead. I think that they're like the developers of the game created an experience with a very specific intent and wanted you to experience it that way.
Even though I said that and I agree with it and I maintain that opinion, I am surprised because as I think about the ideology of my opinion, I'm normally not on the side of like, I'm not on the side of like big corporations, but like I am, I root for the underdog and I agree, like, you know, individual, that's good. Yeah. But I also, in that case, with the Cuphead example, I think that the content creator, the developer of that game, has in that case is still the little guy. Like I'm not saying, oh yeah, like
and those
for the big corporation.
And in the case of that game, like they were even like honestly, they are figuratively the little guy. Like it was two brothers out of Montreal, I think they're Canadian. Anyways,
awesome.
So really cool. So this is different because this game was developed by EA, the biggest video game company on the planet. Like not on the planet, in North America. So
then maybe if I do whatever I agree with, I've asserted my opinion on that. I'm just a little surprised that it went there, but now that you've kind of explained it
qualified
more,
it, okay, so this game comes out. You spent $80 on it, and you've got the game.
Okay.
Certain parts of the game are gated off, and you have to unlock them by buying them with in-game currency you earn and accrue by playing the game, which doesn't sound so bad.
Okay.
Currently. Someone ran the math, and based on the amount of time you'd have to put in the game, and this has changed. I should also like preface, like this is a like week to couple of weeks old story, and so there's been some more developments and some of the stuff has changed. I didn't buy the game because I conceptually don't agree with what happened, and so that's the way that I'm expressing.
You're not caught up on
so I'm expressing my dissent, but it may not be with accurate information because I am not playing the game.
Okay. But this is the reason you're not playing the game.
But this is the reason that I'm not playing the game. So all of this content is gated off, and so far it's not too bad because it's through in-game currency, so it's not like asking me to spend more money to get this stuff yet. The way that those credits are earned isn't tied to any. It's not really related to performance. They've said it was, but like again, based on like the early footage and reviews that broke and stuff like that, it's mostly related to time in game. So if I play the game and am amazing and I like carry the team to victory and like I'm the playmaker and do all of the stuff I'm supposed to be doing, I earn more or less the same amount as if I just stood and looked at a wall for 20 minutes in that game and did nothing. It was also determined through basic maths that it would take roughly 30 to 40 hours of playing this game to accrue enough currency to unlock one of the hero characters. Just one of the hero characters. And there was like 6 or 7 in that game to be unlocked. And that's in addition to other cosmetics and stuff that you equip to those characters that actually has like a measurable impact on how you play that game. Like it changes how much damage you do, like how fast stuff skills come back so that you can use them again, etc., etc. Mm-hmm. So it takes a long time to get the stuff that you want. And in addition to that, the way that you unlock all of the other stuff beyond those characters is through loot boxes, which are random crates. You just buy one of those crates and it opens up and it gives you a random assortment of stuff, possibly for characters that you don't own. Exactly.
I just made a face.
Yeah, so you can earn those crates in game. So hypothetically, up to this point, everything in the game can be earned and unlocked without spending any additional money. But you can also buy those crates for real money.
Like what?
Like you put in your credit card number and you can buy those crates. You can pay $10.
That may or may not be useful to you.
That may or may not be useful to you. And there's no guarantee that any of those items will or won't.
But you can still buy them.
So this is the interesting debate because and like the reason that I brought up that argument for one, like I was interested in that argument like on its own merits because I was just interested to see like how you thought on Cuphead specifically, but
I knew it was a trick.
But the reason that I bring it up is because I saw a couple people that I know commented on it, and in the Cuphead debate they were actually on the other side of it and saying like this should be accessible to like everyone should be able to get to the end of this game, which I disagree with. And again, like that may or may not be valid. I don't know. But in this argument as well, they were still saying that's a very entitled attitude to take towards these people who made this game and this experience. Like you should just be able, like because you can play and earn without any additional buy-in, this is okay. And this is just people being whiny babies.
Okay, wait. So they sided with the consumer in both cases.
So they sided with the they sided with the consumer in both cases, I guess.
So then in the second case, who was being whiny?
Well, people, the general, the sentiment,
the people that said, "Oh, this isn't fair."
The people said that this is a bad system. Like, this is poorly designed. We need to change. And obviously, because the internet is the internet, like people
I don't get it.
Express that with various.
I understand how siding with these people that that we're talking about, they sided with the consumer in the first game because they thought that anybody should be
like if you
win.
buy it, you should be able to get to the end.
But then in the other one,
they said that the consumer, so I guess I actually guess they're anti-consumer in the second scenario, because they're saying that like because you can earn everything because you can earn everything in that game through gameplay alone, this system is fine.
So they're actually they're siding with the company. With the company, because they're saying that the players who are whining about, oh, I can't do this.
There's an avenue for you to earn everything eventually.
Okay, so I'm so glad we're talking about this. Yeah. This is fascinating.
I know, right?
And I know you're just like tickled that like you've got me fascinated in something to do with video games. But this isn't a secret. Like, you know how to get me.
Oh yeah, no.
I mean, this reeled me in. I'm very interested in this. I have some sociology professors who I'd like to talk to about this. I'm a little bit surprised that, so I'm opposite, like, of the people that you're talking about. So
you're saying this is a shit system.
It is a shit system, but then for the first game, it's the consumers are being whiny babies.
Right.
So that's what I'm saying. I'm opposite.
This is interesting. This is interesting.
What I find really interesting is that, like, I think I expected, when you said you had people that commented on this that you knew, I expected them to just side with the same group of people in both cases, and then I would be the oddball for having it divided. We're all divided but opposite.
Yeah.
And the reason for that is, I think that they're different examples. Like, these two case studies are different. And you can't look at them as the same situation. Because, and again, with the caveat, that as long as the first game is not about physical accessibility. As long, because if we're getting into that, this is a completely different conversation.
And I agree with that. Like, that would be, I would have a very different stance if we were talking about physical accessibility. But in this case, it is purely a conversation about the accessibility of content.
And then just like the way that the developers have created
the intent of the creator, and I guess the right of the creator,
the experience of going through the game as they see fit.
Right.
So as long as physical accessibility is out, I think that it is a completely different example, because in the first game, it's, yes, there is a level of privilege involved. Maybe you play more games. Maybe you have time to play more games. Maybe there's other socioeconomic factors involved with you being better at that. But the game itself, if we add society into the mix to blame, then maybe we blame them. But if our choices are blame the developer of the game or blame the consumer, the developer is not at fault.
Right.
Because the developer had a vision for the game. Right. And that's valid, I think. In the other game, there is a lot of inherent privilege that could withhold you from being able to do that. And whereas in the first game, I don't feel like the developers are, like, banking on it, I feel like in the second game they are. Right. Like, they're banking on the fact that there's privilege. Yes. They are taking advantage of the fact that some people have more disposable time to spend on this game and or disposable income to get ahead in this game potentially. And also, that's unfair. Yes. Yeah. Okay. So that's where I land as well. Like, that's, and this is like a really good example of how our minds are similar, because I do not play video games, and Scott did not tell me his opinions before explaining the situation. Which is quite funny,
Yeah.
actually.
Yeah, so this like from the so this is from my perspective, like as someone who plays probably more games than he should, but this is where we're at. I think I would be less upset about it if it was just cosmetic. Like if these unlockables had no tangible effect on the gameplay.
I agree. As someone who doesn't play games, I think that's fair.
Yeah. I think like where and I still don't think that's a great system in a game that encourages a paid transaction, because I think like despite the fact that like if you want to get very pedantic about it, like under the current letter of the law, it's not gambling because you always get something from that transaction. It's still,
but you don't know if it's something you can use.
That's the thing. It's still based it's rooted entirely in chance. Like it's not, as far as I know, they haven't kind of talk, and they never will talk about like how their algorithm is designed. But as far as I know, it's not biased towards stuff that you own. Because I've listened and read people who reviewed, like played the game and reviewed it, and said that like they were unlocking stuff for characters that they didn't own.
That doesn't make sense.
Yeah, which is well, it does from the like cold capitalist side of, if we give them a bunch of stuff for characters they don't own, they're going to want to own those characters, right? And so they're going to do what they need to do to unlock that stuff, which is either
Yeah, but if
buy
you
the
know
crates
anything
to do
about
it.
me, I'm very like against everything you just said.
Yeah, no, totally. I'm not saying that's right. I'm just saying like again, this is totally me putting on my tinfoil hat territory, because like I'm not speaking for anyone, and I am again building up the straw man of like the cold capitalist, like mustache twirling CEO. But in this case, I feel like enough of the stuff lines up that like
that's like true.
it seems like it seems more or less fair to say, because like
the fact that there's an exchange of money really bothers me.
Yeah,
like,
and that's
compare, especially if you compare these two games, like the people complaining about them are coming from completely different perspectives.
Yeah.
In the first game, you're not being asked to spend money. And again, to make a thought experiment out of that, if that game, instead of like you said, there was like a simple mode, if there was a mode where you could buy your way towards it,
Sure.
I would have more problems with that.
Absolutely.
The fact that they allow you to purchase things when you've already purchased their game,
right,
just to get ahead or potentially get ahead or get a chance to get ahead. No.
Yeah, like when there's like the thing that bothers me about it is that there's a measurable impact on gaming, because some of those things are power-ups and things that literally change the way that those characters play, and so influences like the strategy, but also that there's no it's not performance. If there was a performance-based way to unlock all of that stuff in a reasonable amount of time, like, and this is something that like this was interesting because I saw someone in the comments bring this up as an example. They're like, in this other game called Super Smash Bros. Fighting game, whatever, it doesn't matter. There are characters that you need to unlock. But they're all based on performance. Like they were like talking about like how
that's just getting to another level.
Yeah, if you want to unlock Ness, you need to beat the game on normal with no continues, and then you've unlocked Ness. And like the example breaks down because one, there's not a way to buy Ness and unlock him immediately, or buy a box that like gives you a random chance of unlocking Ness. But there's a skill-based way to access them, whereas in Star Wars Battlefront, like there might be a little bit of wiggle room where like maybe they biased it a little bit more towards performance now, where like you earn a few more credits, but like it hasn't been enough of a sea change that people are talking about it. When they're like, no one's updated the reviews to say like, oh hey, Battlefield is fair now. The other really crazy thing is, after all of this stuff broke, because there were a lot of people talking about this, because it's a AAA platform, it's the biggest video game company in the world, and like, I don't know, people kind of like Star Wars, so like,
I never knew that.
Yeah, so like obviously there were like a lot of groups converging in on this, that were kind of looking at this
but that's also why it's taking advantage of people, because
absolutely.
it's using these franchises that people
Totally.
they know people will spend the money, and that's
totally.
like,
yeah,
that's
exactly
unethical.
Yeah, exactly. And so like it would be it would be a different story if there was a performance-based way. Like if I go in as Darth Maul and I'm amazing and that unlocks me a bunch of Darth Maul stuff, then like I would be way more amenable. Still a little bit
That's
mad.
a very different
like still a little bit mad,
game
but like
than what we're talking
exactly
about.
Like here, like the way that it looks, and they've since done, like they've done interviews. They did an AMA on Reddit where the developers talked directly to the fan base, which like that went well, and it didn't go well. And they did all this stuff, and like at no point were they able to give a straight faced explanation about why this was a good decision for the game, for the community that played the game,
because it's not
whatever. No, it's purely business. It's obviously like there's no way that it's not entirely a business decision. And the way that I know that is because like after all of this bad press came to light, they almost immediately reduced the prices of the characters in the game by, I think it was about 40 to 50%, which means like on the face of it seems okay, but like, and again, like tinfoil hat, this is me. This is me like thinking out loud. The only way that a company as big as EA would be able to change those prices that fast is if they already knew that was an acceptable price to put stuff at, because obviously they're still making money at that price point. But that they were able to drop it so much means that they already knew that there was a place they could walk it back to, so that they could come out back and say like, hey, like we listened to your feedback, we're like that's looking at the situation. Shitty. Yeah, like all of it just leaves like a really bad taste in my mouth.
That makes me mad, and I don't even play games.
Yeah,
like
exactly.
I have no interest in this.
Yeah.
Like I don't like it when companies that are that big and that powerful and already have that much money take advantage of their consumers.
Well, and it feels like because of the way the system is designed, like with those loot blocks, like no matter what, whether you do it through in-game currency or whether you buy them, you're still pulling the lever on a slot machine, and that part. Most of all, like that's the part that bothers me the most, because it really feels like they've like these companies have found a way to make gambling accessible to children, because
that's fucked up.
Because the people there's no chance that all of the people who play those games are above the age of 18.
Well, and it's not
like,
fair,
age of majority.
And it's not right, because you don't teach kids or anybody the unfairness of life through a video game. Like, that's just bullshit.
Yeah, exactly. Like,
and it's taking advantage of them. And you know, something about video games that I'm like not at all qualified to talk about, but
I might know someone who is.
I don't know enough about them to really have a stance on this, except for just saying that sociologically speaking, parents are not aware enough of the games that their kids consume. For a lot of like, if I had a kid, if I just in a not like if boom I had a kid tomorrow, but like in a world where I am a parent
and raising a child,
and I am still me,
yeah,
I am that parent.
Sure.
Like I don't know enough about video
absolutely.
games. Like
no, listen,
and I can't be alone.
I'll tell you as someone who probably is more or less equipped to speak to that. Absolutely, kids don't, or parents don't really most parents don't really understand what's happening when a kid plays a video game.
And I want to qualify it by saying I'm not somebody who thinks that video games are causing violence.
Right.
I do not think that. I think that is a myth. It is bullshit. It is causing toxic perceptions about media in our culture.
It's true.
I don't know if I was ever someone who believed that, but I definitely believed it significantly less after studying it. I took a seminar course in university on video games and gaming and other technologies, and it really snapped it into focus, like how many damaging opinions there are about video games that are just founded with absolutely no scientific proof.
Yeah.
Like nothing. And it comes from the same place of people who don't understand them.
Yeah.
But it scares me on both sides, because there's the side of the people who see one game and think they're all like that.
Right.
They're all violent. And then they think that that there is causation from that, which is completely made up. And then there's the other side where they just have no idea.
Right.
And that's scary too, because there is violent games. There is games that are not appropriate for children that children are playing.
Yep.
And that parents are buying for them because they think it's a game. Like they have no concept for what it is.
Sure.
Even if it's like grandparents, like if you divorce it a couple generations, like just they think it's a little bit more innocent than some of them are. They don't understand the content.
Right.
So you have that issue on both sides, and it's just this unawareness. Mm-hmm. And then to have companies like that do shit like that.
Totally.
It's really unethical.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah. I really think it's
1,000%.
unethical.
Yeah. It's a very real problem. I think that and I should stress as well that this is a relatively recent trend in gaming. Because up until very recently, there wasn't a way for someone to punch their credit card into a game. This is within within the last like probably.
But that means it's even less regulated because there's
Oh yeah,
no like
absolutely. It's like
there's no precedent.
Yeah, it's not.
for
It's
it.
not like it's not less dangerous because of that. It's like it is a fairly recent phenomenon. Like within the last few years, I would say that like games have been monetized this
There
aggressively.
needs to be more education.
There does, absolutely.
About how they're consumed, because if you buy a game for a kid not knowing what it's about,
well, and even
it's that much easier when your kid says, "Oh, I need to buy this thing for the game," and they're just like they don't know, and they don't know they're part of the problem.
Well, and there
it's not their
needs to
fault.
be more like or not. There doesn't need to be more, but it's just like it's. I think the tough thing about this too is that like the landscape of gaming has changed so substantially that like even if you were engaged as a parent, like even a few years ago, and then that slid a little for whatever reason, and you're not kind of up on what games look like now, like those are two absolutely different industries that we're talking about. Like it's the monetization schemes are different, the designs were different, mobile gaming wasn't really a consideration until really recently. Like all that stuff is just it's new.
It's happening.
Yeah, so it's pretty crazy. But anyways, yeah, that's like kind of the high level view of like two fairly recent, one very prominent, one less prominent. The EA thing, one of their official comments that they made, or that the developers made to the community, is now the most downvoted comment of all time on Reddit.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
So they did a really good job of managing the whole situation. Yeah.
That's interesting.
Yeah. That's the Scott Gaming Hour.
And it started because my puppy needed a break.
Yeah,
Okay, so we've talked about literally everything.
it's true.
But there's still so much more. So we're going to have to do that little, however we do that, we'll have to figure out logistics. And then hopefully we can do this consistently. What does that look like?
I don't know. That's
Like, the only thing I am, like, beholden to is that I promised our friends this would be up within a week.
okay.
And we don't even have to stick to that, but if we don't, it'll never happen.
Sure. Okay.
And I know that for anyone listening, this is very confusing because you are theoretically listening
The people
to the
we're
fourth
talking about.
episode, and you're also the people we're talking about, and this is also already there. So this is Inception
Yep.
for you.
Yeah, it's true. Yeah.
Like, not for us. Like, we're coming to you from, like, the past and or the future, potentially. I don't even know.
Yeah. Good luck finding your way out of this one. Yeah. I don't know. Is that an on-mic conversation? Probably not, right? We can just say bye.
I don't think we have anything else. I think there's nothing else we probably should say at
Yeah,
this point.
it's true.
Like, probably we both need to, like, get back to our lives.
That's probably true also. Yeah, I don't know. Video games are great. Video games suck.
I don't even remember what I talked about in this episode. How did we start it?
I don't... How can,
I think
how
this is the
can you
one.
out-
I think this is the one
this is
where
group
we
speak.
talked about group speak.
Yeah, this is group speak.
So we figured it out. It only took us one episode
Yeah.
to figure it out.
That's pretty good.
And I think it was a pretty good. We came to some pretty good conclusions
Yeah.
in this.
I think so.
This is for being about nothing. This was a very mature nothing conversation. The
Yeah.
previous podcast was actually, like, pretty good.
I don't even remember what
That was
looked
legitimate.
like. I don't even...
That was about.
I don't even know
mental
what I
wealth.
think. I don't know who I am.
I'm just
I
going
don't
to
know
keep dropping mental
where
wealth
I am.
and tell people
I don't know what I'm doing here.
associate mental wealth with me and my name. Mental wealth.
Copyright this podcast.
Yes, I'm coining the term. Okay, yeah, we're done, and we'll be
Yeah.
back when we're back, if ever.
Yeah. Bye.